The wedding was beautiful, calm, and full of quiet joy as soft white flowers moved gently in the warm afternoon air and sunlight touched every smiling face, making the small garden glow with peace and love while guests laughed softly, adjusted their clothes, and lifted their phones to capture sweet memories. And gentle music floated through the space like a warm hug, creating a peaceful moment that felt almost magical. And at the center of it all stood Daniel, the groom, wearing a clean black tuxedo that fit him perfectly, his shoes polished, his hair neat, and his face glowing with pride and happiness as he held the hand of his bride Maya, who looked radiant in her white dress, her eyes shining with excitement and nervous joy. And together they felt ready to step into a new life filled with hope, dreams, and shared promises. And their families watched them with warm smiles and quiet tears, feeling proud and grateful for this beautiful day that had finally arrived after months of planning and waiting. And the air felt light, happy, and full of love, as if nothing in the world could disturb this perfect moment. But suddenly, a loud police siren cut through the soft music like a sharp knife, breaking the calm air and making everyone freeze at once. And the smiles slowly faded from faces as heads turned quickly toward the sound. And the happy chatter stopped, leaving a strange silence that felt heavy and uncomfortable. And a police car slowly rolled toward the wedding area, its lights flashing softly but clearly, drawing all eyes toward it. And whispers began to move through the crowd like nervous wind, people leaning closer to each other and speaking in low voices, asking questions filled with worry and confusion. Some guests wondering if there was an accident nearby, others thinking maybe someone had made a mistake, and a few feeling fear rise in their chest without knowing why, while Maya's fingers tightened around Daniel's hand, her heart beating faster as her smile slowly disappeared and her eyes filled with quiet concern. And Daniel felt the change in the air too, even though he tried to stay calm, his mind searching for any reason the police could be there. But nothing made sense because everything was peaceful and legal, and the wedding had followed all the rules. And still the police car stopped only a short distance away, making the moment feel serious and heavy. And two police officers stepped out of the vehicle, their uniforms clean and sharp, their faces serious and focused, and their eyes scanning the area carefully as if looking for something important. And the sight of them made several guests feel nervous, with a few people lifting their phones quietly, unsure whether they should record or hide them, while others crossed their arms or held their breath. And the soft music had already stopped, leaving only the sound of distant birds and the quiet movement of people shifting in place. And from a nearby house just across the small fence, a neighbor stood watching with crossed arms and a tight expression on his face, his eyes narrow and cold, as if he was not happy about what he was seeing. And no one noticed him at first because all attention was fixed on the officers. But the neighbor had been watching the wedding for a long time, feeling annoyed by the gathering, the laughter, the cars parked near his home, and the unfamiliar faces filling the area. And deep inside he had already made a choice that would soon change the mood of the entire day, though the wedding guests did not yet know it. And as the officers began walking slowly toward the group, the air felt thicker and people stood straighter without realizing it. Some guests holding their bags closer, some parents gently pulling their children nearer to them. And Maya whispered softly to Daniel, asking what was happening, her voice shaking slightly, even though she tried to stay brave. And Daniel squeezed her hand gently, telling her everything was okay, even though his own heart was beating faster than before. And he stood tall, refusing to let fear show on his face, because this was their wedding day, and he wanted to protect the happiness of that moment as much as possible. And a quiet tension settled over the crowd, like a dark cloud passing in front of the sun, making the joyful scene suddenly feel uncertain and strange. and the guests began to look at one another, trying to read each other's expressions, hoping someone else might understand what was happening. But no one had answers, and the neighbor remained still in the background, hidden partly by the fence and shadows, watching the scene unfold with a hard look, unaware that his decision would soon be revealed. And the officers continued forward with calm but serious steps, their shoes touching the ground with steady sounds that felt loud in the silence. And the soft wind moved the wedding decorations gently, as if trying to bring peace back into the space. But the feeling of suspense had already taken over, and every second felt longer than the last as hearts beat faster and minds filled with questions. And some guests felt uneasy simply because the presence of police always brings worry, even when nothing is wrong. And others felt protective of the couple, hoping nothing would ruin such a special day. And Maya took a deep breath, trying to calm herself, reminding herself that Daniel was strong and kind, and that truth always stands tall. And Daniel kept his eyes forward, meeting the situation with quiet strength and patience, trusting that whatever was happening would soon be explained, and still no one spoke. And the silence continued to stretch as the officers came closer, making the crowd hold its breath. And the warm sunlight still shined down on the flowers and smiling decorations that now felt like silent witnesses to the sudden change in mood. And the wedding that moments ago felt like a dream now felt like a mystery waiting to be solved. And the guests could sense that something important was about to happen, something that would change the direction of the day in a way no one expected. And even the birds seemed quieter, as if the world itself was watching. And in that moment, between happiness and fear, between celebration and confusion, the wedding stood frozen in time, waiting for the truth to step forward and reveal why the police had arrived and what would happen next. Disturbance. And the word suspicious caused a ripple of confusion and discomfort among the guests, because the wedding was clearly peaceful and joyful, and nothing about it looked dangerous or wrong. And a quiet murmur moved through the crowd as people tried to make sense of the strange claim. And Maya felt a small knot form in her stomach, wondering why anyone would see their happy moment as something suspicious. And Daniel felt a brief flash of sadness mixed with confusion, because he had always believed kindness and openness were easy to recognize. Yet now someone had judged their celebration without knowing them. And he looked around gently, scanning the nearby houses and fences, trying to see if anyone was watching, and his eyes briefly caught the shape of the neighbor standing behind the fence, though the man quickly turned his face away, pretending to look at something else. And Daniel did not yet understand the meaning of that glance, but he felt a quiet sense that the answer might be closer than he realized. And the tall officer asked if they had any paperwork or proof of permission for the event. And Daniel politely asked a family member to bring the folder that held the documents. And within moments, the papers were placed into the officer's hands, and he carefully looked through them while the second officer leaned in to check as well. And the silence during that moment felt long and heavy, with guests holding their breath and listening to the soft sound of pages moving in the breeze. And Maya whispered a short, hopeful prayer in her heart, asking for peace and understanding. And after a few seconds, the tall officer nodded slowly, confirming that everything appeared in order and that there was no clear rule being broken. And a soft wave of relief passed through the crowd, though the tension did not fully disappear yet, because the officers still had questions about the call. And the shorter officer closed his notepad and looked thoughtfully at Daniel, studying his face again as if something about him felt familiar. And his eyes narrowed slightly in curiosity rather than suspicion. And he tilted his head a little, trying to connect a memory. And Daniel noticed the change in the officer's expression, but did not understand its meaning yet. And the guests began to relax slightly, with a few shoulders dropping and a few quiet breaths escaping. But everyone remained alert, waiting for the next words. And the tall officer thanked Daniel for his cooperation and said they only needed to confirm a few more things before leaving. And those words brought a small sense of hope to Maya's heart, though she still stayed close to Daniel, not wanting to let go of his hand. And the neighbor behind the fence shifted his weight nervously, realizing that the situation was not turning out as he had expected, and he felt a slight twist of worry in his chest, though his pride kept him standing there instead of walking away. And the breeze picked up again, gently moving the decorations and carrying the faint smell of flowers throughout the air, reminding everyone that this place was meant for love and celebration, not fear and suspicion. And the sun slowly moved across the sky, casting warm light on the faces of the guests and the officers alike, softening the sharp edges of the moment. And Daniel stood quietly, patient and respectful, trusting that truth would soon settle everything. And Maya kept her eyes on his face, drawing strength from his calm presence. And the guests waited together in shared silence, knowing that the next few moments would decide whether the wedding would continue peacefully or turn into a story of stress and disappointment. And deep in the background, the neighbor swallowed hard, realizing that the simple call he had made without full thought had created a wave of tension and fear for many people. And he began to feel the first small seed of regret, though he was not yet ready to face it openly. And the officers prepared to speak again, setting the stage for a turning point that would soon change the mood of the entire gathering. The shorter officer shifted his weight slightly and looked once more at Daniel with growing curiosity, his eyes moving slowly from Daniel's face to his posture and back again, as if trying to unlock a forgotten memory that sat just out of reach. And the tall officer noticed this change and paused his own movement, allowing his partner a quiet moment to think, while the guest stood still, feeling the air tighten again with silent expectation. And the soft wind brushed against the chairs and flowers, creating a gentle sound that felt louder than usual in the tense quiet. And Maya felt a small chill run through her, even though the sun was warm, because waiting without answers can make the heart uneasy. And Daniel stayed steady, breathing slowly, reminding himself that patience and calm often lead to clarity. And the shorter officer finally lifted his head and asked Daniel where he lived and what kind of work he did. And the question seemed simple, but the way it was asked carried a deeper curiosity rather than suspicion. And Daniel answered politely, explaining that he lived nearby and worked in community safety and rescue training, helping teach people how to stay safe during floods and emergencies. And the moment those words left his mouth, something sparked in the officer's eyes, a quiet flash of recognition mixed with surprise, though he did not yet speak his thought out loud, and he simply nodded and wrote a small note in his book. And the tall officer continued to explain that the call they received described loud noise, blocked access, and unusual activity. And as he spoke, a soft murmur passed through the guests, because none of those claims matched what had been happening. And a few guests shook their heads gently, whispering that the music had been low and the area had been kept clean and open. And Maya felt a wave of sadness and confusion, wondering why anyone would describe their peaceful celebration in such a negative way. And Daniel listened carefully, feeling a quiet sense of disappointment that someone would see their joy as trouble. And he looked once more toward the nearby houses, scanning the fences and windows. And this time, he clearly saw the neighbor again, standing stiffly with his arms still crossed, though now his posture looked less confident and more tense. And Daniel's eyes met the neighbor's eyes for a brief second. And in that moment, Daniel felt a strange sense of understanding, as if a silent message passed between them, though nothing was spoken. And the neighbor quickly looked away, pretending to focus on something inside his yard. But his tight jaw and restless hands revealed inner worry. And Daniel gently turned his attention back to the officers, not wanting to create conflict on such an important day. And the tall officer asked if any disagreements had happened with neighbors recently. And Daniel paused for a short moment, thinking carefully. And he answered honestly that he did not know of any conflict and that no one had spoken to him directly about any problems. And Maya nodded softly beside him, supporting his words, and the guests remained quiet, allowing Daniel to speak for everyone, and the shorter officer's curiosity continued to grow. And he studied Daniel's face more closely now, noticing the calm strength in his expression and the quiet confidence in his voice. And it stirred a memory from his past, a news story he had once seen during a difficult rescue season, though the details were still forming in his mind. And he gently asked Daniel if he had ever been involved in any major rescue or public event. And Daniel gave a small, humble smile and said that he had helped during a large flood the year before, working long hours with volunteers to move families to safe areas. And the moment he said this, the shorter officer's eyes widened slightly, and his mouth opened just a little in quiet surprise, because the memory now became clearer, though he still waited to fully confirm it. And he looked toward his partner with a meaningful glance, though he did not speak yet. And the tall officer noticed the look and raised an eyebrow in silent question. And the guests felt the shift in energy, even if they did not understand its cause, sensing that something important was beginning to unfold. And Maya felt a strange mix of hope and curiosity rising in her chest. And Daniel remained calm, unaware of the full meaning of the officer's reaction. And the tall officer continued speaking in a steady voice, explaining that they only wanted to make sure everyone was safe and that no laws were being broken. And he thanked Daniel again for his cooperation. And his tone softened slightly, showing respect and professionalism. And the tension in the crowd eased just a little more, with a few guests allowing themselves small, quiet smiles, though they still stayed alert. And in the background, the neighbor shifted again, feeling sweat gather on his forehead despite the cool breeze, because he sensed that the situation was not going the way he had imagined, and he had expected the police to scold the wedding or shut it down. But instead, the officers were calm and respectful, and the groom seemed confident and kind, and the neighbor's heart began to feel heavy with doubt and regret, and he started to question his own actions, though pride kept him standing where he was. And the shorter officer finally closed his notepad and looked directly at Daniel with a more open expression. And he asked Daniel to confirm his full name. And Daniel answered clearly, and when the name was spoken, the officer's face changed even more, his surprise now clearly visible. And he inhaled slowly as if steadying himself. And he said the name softly again, as if tasting the memory. And the tall officer turned fully toward his partner, sensing that something important had just clicked in his mind. And the guests leaned forward slightly, their curiosity rising. And Maya looked up at Daniel with wide eyes, silently asking what was happening. And Daniel gave her a small reassuring nod, though he himself felt confused by the sudden change in the officer's behavior. And the shorter officer then explained carefully that he believed he recognized Daniel from a past news story and community report about a man who had helped save many families during a dangerous flood. And as he spoke, a quiet ripple of surprise moved through the crowd, with a few guests exchanging amazed glances. And Maya's eyes widened in pride and shock, because Daniel had rarely spoken about that time, choosing to stay humble and focused on the present. And Daniel felt his cheeks warm slightly, feeling shy about the attention. And he gently said that he had only done what anyone should do to help others in need. And the officer smiled softly, clearly impressed by Daniel's humility. And the tall officer listened closely now, his serious expression slowly softening as well. And the atmosphere shifted from tension to curiosity and respect. And the guests felt their fear melting away, replaced by growing interest and pride. And in the background, the neighbor felt his stomach drop as he overheard the words about rescue and heroism, realizing that the man he had judged so quickly was someone who had helped many people. And shame slowly began to creep into his heart, though he remained silent and hidden behind the fence. And the shorter officer said that he wanted to confirm the story fully before making any official statement. And he asked Daniel a few gentle questions about the flood, such as the location and the type of help provided, and Daniel answered simply and honestly, explaining how he had helped guide families through rising water and worked with rescue teams to move children and elderly people to safe ground. And his voice remained calm and steady, not proud or dramatic, just truthful. And the officer nodded slowly with each answer, his respect growing with every word. And the tall officer now watched Daniel with a new understanding. And the guest stood quietly, listening with deep attention. And the wedding space that had once been filled with fear now began to feel filled with admiration and wonder. And Maya felt her heart swell with pride and love for Daniel, squeezing his hand gently as her eyes shone with emotion. And Daniel returned the squeeze softly, feeling grateful for her support and love. And the neighbor felt smaller and smaller inside, realizing how wrong his judgment had been. And he wished quietly that he could take back the call he had made, though he knew it was too late for that. And the officers prepared to speak again, their tone now respectful and warm, signaling that the truth was beginning to shine through the tension and misunderstanding. And the entire gathering sensed that a powerful change was unfolding, one that would soon turn fear into surprise and judgment into respect. The shorter officer took a slow breath and straightened his posture, his face now showing clear recognition and respect rather than doubt. And he looked directly at Daniel with steady eyes, as if speaking not only as a police officer, but also as a grateful citizen who remembered a powerful moment from the past. And he gently said Daniel's name again, confirming it with quiet certainty. And this time, there was no hesitation in his voice. And the tall officer turned fully toward Daniel, noticing the change in his partner's tone and body language, and the guests leaned in slightly, feeling that something important was about to be revealed. And the warm sunlight continued to shine over the wedding space, touching the flowers and chairs and faces, as if lighting the scene for a meaningful moment. And Maya felt her heart beat faster again, not from fear this time, but from curiosity and growing hope. And Daniel remained calm and humble, though he sensed that the conversation was moving in a direction he had not expected. And the shorter officer then spoke clearly and respectfully, explaining that he had finally remembered where he had seen Daniel before. And he said that during the terrible floods the previous year, there had been news stories and community reports about a man who had worked day and night helping rescue families trapped by rising water, guiding children and elderly people to safety, sharing food and blankets, and refusing to leave until everyone was safe. And as the officer spoke, the memory became vivid in his own mind, and he shared how those stories had inspired many people in the city, including some officers who had followed the rescue updates closely. And a soft wave of surprise moved through the guests as they listened, with a few mouths opening slightly in amazement. And Maya turned toward Daniel with wide eyes, her expression filled with pride and gentle shock, because even she had not known the full impact of what Daniel had done. And Daniel felt his face grow warm, not from embarrassment, but from humble discomfort at being praised so openly. And he gently lowered his eyes for a moment, feeling grateful that the lives saved mattered more than any attention. And the tall officer now nodded slowly, his serious face softening into a look of respect as he listened to his partner's words. And the atmosphere of the wedding space changed once more, shifting away from tension and confusion into something warmer and more meaningful. And the guests felt their earlier fear melting away, replaced by curiosity and admiration. And the shorter officer continued, explaining that he remembered a photo from the news showing Daniel carrying a small child through deep water while guiding a group of frightened families toward safety. And he described how Daniel had refused interviews afterward, choosing instead to return quietly to his normal life. And this detail touched the hearts of many guests, because it showed not only courage but humility and kindness. And Maya felt tears gather in her eyes as she squeezed Daniel's hand gently, her heart filled with love and pride for the man she was marrying. And Daniel quietly whispered that he had only done what felt right at the time, and that many others had helped as well. And the officer smiled warmly, appreciating Daniel's modesty. And he then turned slightly toward the guests and spoke loud enough for everyone to hear, explaining that there was no danger or wrongdoing at the wedding and that the groom was a respected community helper known for saving lives. And a soft murmur of amazement passed through the crowd, followed by small gasps and gentle smiles. And some guests who had felt nervous moments earlier now stood taller, feeling proud to be part of this celebration. And the tall officer stepped forward and extended his hand toward Daniel in a respectful gesture, thanking him sincerely for his past service to the community and for his calm cooperation today. And Daniel shook the officer's hand firmly but humbly, thanking him in return for keeping the community safe. And this simple exchange carried deep meaning, showing mutual respect and understanding between them. And the guests watched with warm expressions, feeling the tension finally dissolve into relief and admiration. And in the background, the neighbor stood frozen behind the fence, listening to every word with growing shock and regret, realizing that the man he had judged unfairly was someone who had risked his life to help others. And the neighbor felt a heavy weight settle in his chest, a painful mix of shame and guilt, because his careless call had nearly disrupted the wedding of a true hero. And he lowered his eyes, no longer able to hold the proud posture he had earlier. And the shorter officer then apologized openly for the interruption, explaining that they had to respond to every call, but that they were glad to see everything was safe and peaceful. And he wished the couple happiness and a joyful future together. And his tone was sincere and warm, and the tall officer nodded in agreement, adding that it was an honor to meet Daniel and that he hoped the rest of the wedding would be filled with laughter and love. And a gentle wave of applause rose from the guests, not loud or dramatic, but heartfelt and supportive, and Maya smiled through happy tears, feeling deeply touched by the unexpected recognition of Daniel's kindness. And Daniel felt a quiet sense of gratitude, not for the praise, but for the chance to see how goodness can return in surprising ways. And the sunlight seemed brighter now, the breeze softer, and the flowers more colorful, as if the world itself was celebrating the shift from fear to respect. And the officers prepared to leave, stepping back toward their car with calm and friendly expressions. And before fully turning away, the shorter officer asked if they could take a quick photo with the couple as a positive memory. And Daniel and Maya exchanged a surprised glance before smiling and agreeing. And a family member quickly took a photo of the smiling couple standing between the two officers, capturing a moment of unity and goodwill. And the guests smiled and laughed softly, feeling the joy returning to the space. And the neighbor watched this scene with a heavy heart, realizing how wrong his judgment had been and how small his actions now felt compared to Daniel's kindness. And he quietly stepped back from the fence, no longer wanting to be seen. And the officers waved goodbye and returned to their vehicle, starting the engine and preparing to leave. And as the police car slowly drove away, a deep breath of relief passed through the crowd, and the wedding space filled once again with warmth and gentle happiness. And Maya leaned closer to Daniel, whispering how proud she was of him, and Daniel smiled softly, reminding her that love and kindness always find their way back. And the guests began to settle back into their seats, ready to continue the ceremony with renewed appreciation and gratitude. And the unexpected interruption had now become a meaningful memory that added depth and emotion to the day, reminding everyone present that true character shines brightest in moments of challenge, and that respect can grow from misunderstanding when truth and kindness are allowed to speak. As the police car slowly disappeared down the quiet road, the soft sound of its engine faded into the distance, leaving behind a peaceful silence that felt lighter and calmer than before. And the guests released the breath they did not even realize they had been holding, their shoulders relaxing as smiles slowly returned to their faces, and gentle whispers of relief and admiration moved through the crowd like a warm breeze. And the wedding space once again felt safe and welcoming, filled with soft sunlight and the natural beauty of flowers and decorations. And Maya stood close to Daniel, her eyes shining with pride and emotion, and she reached up to gently touch his arm, grounding herself in the reality of the moment. And Daniel looked around at the smiling faces of friends and family, feeling grateful for their support and for the peaceful ending to what could have been a stressful situation. And the wedding planner softly signaled for the music to begin again. And within moments, gentle melodies floated through the air, slowly washing away the leftover tension and replacing it with warmth and joy. And a few guests quietly laughed, sharing soft comments about how unexpected the moment had been. Though their laughter was gentle and respectful, not loud or careless, because everyone still felt the emotional weight of what had just happened. And the officiant returned to the front with a calm smile, waiting patiently for the couple to settle before continuing the ceremony. And Maya took a slow, deep breath, letting the calm rhythm of the music steady her heart. And Daniel squeezed her hand again, offering silent comfort and reassurance. And the guests adjusted their seats and clothing, ready to refocus their attention on the celebration of love. And the sun continued to shine warmly, casting golden light across the gathering, making the white flowers glow softly and the green leaves shimmer gently, and the atmosphere felt almost magical, as if the earlier tension had only made the present peace more meaningful. And Daniel felt a quiet sense of reflection inside his heart, thinking about how quickly joy can turn into worry and how quickly worry can turn into gratitude when truth and patience guided the way. And he silently promised himself to always remain calm and kind, even in unexpected moments, knowing that his actions can shape the mood of those around him. And Maya felt the same sense of gratitude, realizing how strong Daniel's character truly was and how proud she felt to walk beside him into a new chapter of life. And the officiant cleared his throat gently and began speaking once more, guiding the ceremony back to its joyful path. And his words about love, trust, and patience felt even more powerful now, because everyone had just witnessed a real example of those values in action. And the guests listened closely, many of them feeling touched and inspired by the unexpected lesson hidden within the interruption. And as the ceremony continued, a soft breeze moved through the space again, carrying the faint smell of. When it was time for the vows, their voices carried a deeper sincerity, filled with gratitude and emotional strength. And their simple promises felt meaningful and honest, touching the hearts of everyone present. And a few guests quietly wiped away tears, moved by the beauty of the moment and the emotional journey they had just shared together. And applause followed the vows, gentle and warm, filled with happiness and support, and the wedding felt renewed, as if the interruption had added a special layer of meaning to the celebration, making it unforgettable in a positive way. And in the background, the neighbor remained inside his house, watching from a small window with a heavy heart, replaying the officer's words again and again in his mind, feeling deep regret for judging Daniel unfairly and for causing unnecessary fear on such a special day. And he felt a strong desire to apologize, but fear and shame held him back, making him hesitate. And he paced slowly inside his living room, struggling with his thoughts. realizing that true courage sometimes means admitting mistakes and asking for forgiveness. And as the ceremony moved toward its joyful conclusion, the officiant announced the couple as husband and wife, and cheers and applause filled the air, breaking into joyful laughter and smiles. And Maya and Daniel shared their first kiss as a married couple, a simple and sweet moment that carried deep love and happiness. And cameras clicked as guests captured the joyful memory, and the newly married couple turned toward their friends and family with bright smiles, their faces glowing with relief, love, and excitement for the future. And the music grew slightly louder, signaling the start of the celebration portion of the wedding. And guests began to stand, stretch, and move toward the reception area where food and drinks were prepared. And the atmosphere shifted into cheerful movement and conversation. And laughter filled the air once more, and Daniel and Maya greeted their guests warmly, thanking them for coming and sharing small joyful conversations. And many guests quietly told Daniel how proud they felt of him and how inspiring his story was. And Daniel accepted their words with humility, always redirecting praise toward the idea of helping others and staying kind. And Maya watched him with loving admiration, feeling grateful to share her life with someone who carried such a strong and gentle heart. And the sun slowly moved lower in the sky, creating soft shadows and golden light that made the celebration feel warm and peaceful. And the neighbor stood near his door now, gathering courage within himself, listening to the distant laughter and music, and feeling the weight of his mistake grow heavier with each passing moment. And finally he took a deep breath and stepped outside quietly, standing near the edge of his yard, unsure if he should approach or remain hidden. And he watched the joyful crowd from a distance, feeling both fear and hope in his heart. And the wedding continued with light conversation, gentle laughter, and shared happiness. And the couple moved through the crowd, receiving hugs and congratulations. And the earlier tension slowly faded into a distant memory, replaced by warmth and gratitude. And the entire gathering felt united by the shared experience, understanding that unexpected challenges can strengthen bonds rather than break them when handled with patience and respect. And Daniel and Maya felt deeply thankful for the peaceful outcome and for the lesson it had brought into their new life together. And as the celebration continued, the neighbor remained standing quietly in the distance, still deciding whether he would find the courage to step forward and make things right. And the scene held a gentle pause, filled with the promise of healing and understanding yet to come. The neighbor stood quietly at the edge of his yard, the late afternoon light casting long shadows across the grass and fence. And his heart felt heavy with thoughts he could no longer ignore. And every laugh drifting from the wedding made his chest tighten with mixed feelings of regret and guilt, because he knew deep inside that his single, careless decision had caused fear and tension on what should have been one of the happiest days of two people's lives. And he replayed the moment he had made the call in his mind again and again, remembering how irritation and quick judgment had guided his choice rather than patience or understanding. And the memory made his stomach twist with shame, and he slowly rubbed his hands together, feeling nervous and unsure of what to do next. And part of him wanted to stay hidden and pretend nothing had happened. But another stronger part whispered that running away would only deepen the regret in his heart. And he watched Daniel and Maya moving among their guests, smiling warmly, greeting friends and family with kindness and gratitude. And the way Daniel carried himself with calm respect and gentle confidence made the neighbor feel even more ashamed, because this was clearly not a person who deserved suspicion or harm. And the neighbor remembered the officer's words about Daniel helping families during the flood. And those words echoed in his mind like a lesson he had ignored for too long. And he realized how easily fear and misunderstanding can shape actions when people do not take time to truly see one another. And his eyes softened as he watched the couple laugh together, realizing that love and kindness were stronger than his own narrow view, and slowly, after several deep breaths, he made a quiet decision to face his mistake rather than hide from it, and he stepped forward cautiously, crossing the small distance between his yard and the edge of the wedding space, feeling his heart beat faster with every step, and he kept his hands relaxed at his sides, trying to appear calm even though his chest felt tight with nervousness. And a few guests noticed his movement and glanced in his direction with mild curiosity, but no one spoke yet. And the neighbor paused for a moment, gathering courage, and then continued forward with slow, respectful steps. And Daniel noticed him approaching and gently turned his body toward the man, his expression calm and open rather than defensive. And Maya followed Daniel's gaze and recognized the neighbor, and she felt a brief moment of uncertainty. But Daniel's calm presence reassured her, and the neighbor stopped a short distance away, standing with slightly lowered shoulders and eyes that showed regret rather than anger. And he cleared his throat softly, his voice quiet and unsure as he began to speak. And he admitted that he was the one who had called the police earlier, and the words felt heavy as they left his mouth. And a soft hush fell over the nearby guests who had overheard the confession, and the neighbor continued, explaining that he had felt annoyed and uneasy, seeing so many people gathered near his home, and had allowed his fear and wrong assumptions to guide his actions. And he said he was deeply sorry for causing fear and trouble on such a special day. And his voice trembled slightly with honest regret. And he avoided direct eye contact at first, feeling the weight of his mistake. And Daniel listened quietly without interrupting, his face calm and thoughtful, and Maya watched the exchange closely, her emotions mixed but open. And the neighbor finally lifted his eyes and looked directly at Daniel, offering a sincere apology and asking for forgiveness. And for a moment, the air felt still, as if everyone nearby held their breath waiting to see what would happen next. And Daniel took a slow breath, feeling the weight of the moment but also feeling a sense of clarity in his heart. And he gently smiled and spoke in a calm and kind voice, telling the neighbor that while the situation had been stressful, he understood that fear and misunderstanding can sometimes guide people's actions. And he said that he accepted the apology and hoped that they could move forward with peace and respect. And his words were simple but sincere, and they carried the power of forgiveness rather than judgment. And the neighbor felt a wave of relief wash over him, his shoulders relaxing slightly as gratitude filled his eyes, and he thanked Daniel repeatedly, his voice filled with emotion. And Maya smiled softly, appreciating Daniel's kindness and the healing energy of forgiveness. And a few nearby guests smiled as well, feeling touched by the quiet moment of understanding. And the neighbor took a small step back, respecting the couple's space, and promised that he would be more thoughtful and open in the future. And he wished the couple happiness and a joyful life together. And Daniel and Maya thanked him politely. And the neighbor slowly turned and walked back toward his yard with a lighter heart than before, feeling as though a heavy burden had finally been lifted. And the guests slowly returned to their conversations and laughter, feeling inspired by the simple yet powerful act of forgiveness they had just witnessed. And the wedding celebration continued with renewed warmth and harmony. And Daniel and Maya moved among their guests again, their smiles bright and genuine. And Maya quietly told Daniel how proud she was of his calm and compassionate response. And Daniel smiled back, reminding her that kindness often creates bridges where anger builds walls. And the sun continued to lower in the sky, painting the clouds with soft orange and pink colors, adding a peaceful beauty to the evening. And the gentle music played in the background, blending with laughter and conversation, creating a comforting atmosphere of unity and joy. And the neighbor stood quietly near his home, watching the celebration from a respectful distance now, feeling grateful for the chance to make things right and learn from his mistake. and he promised himself to greet his neighbors with more openness and patience in the future, and the entire space felt balanced again, as if a quiet lesson had settled into the hearts of everyone present, reminding them that understanding and forgiveness have the power to heal even unexpected wounds. And as the evening light softened and the celebration moved forward, a sense of peace settled over the gathering, preparing everyone for the joyful final moments still to come.